get comfortable.
It's very comfortable.
Let's start at the beginning and talk a little bit about theater. You came up doing theater. Talk about your work in theater and some of your roles and how it affected you.
Well, I trained for 3 years. I trained for theatre, and it was never it wasn't an ambition of mine to be in film. And at that time, there was no training in film, and now that now you have classes and they do film technique, but in those days when I trained, it was theatre and radio. The old days. So I trained for 3 years. We did everything from the usual stuff. You went through. You studied the Greeks. You studied it was the Jacobeans. It was the Elizabethans. It was Brecht. I did mime. Funny enough, I haven't had much use for it since. Fencing, all of that formal stuff. And then I've been incredibly blessed. I've been very lucky. I have made my living as an actor since I left drama school in 79. And consider myself very lucky. I've never really had to take other jobs or wait tables or do any of that. So I've really made a living being an actor, and was in the theatre for almost 10 years, really, before Sid and Nancy. And then I would do, I did a play after Sid and Nancy, and I would do a sort of, if I was lucky, I would do a play and a film, and a play and a film. In the old days, I don't remember, I don't know how one managed it. When I did Prick Up Your Ears, I was in 5 plays in rep at the RSC. So I would arrive on the set at 8 o'clock, and I would shoot Joe Alton, and at 5 the car would get me, and then I would go to the theatre, and I had 5 plays in my head. I don't know how that would terrify me now. I don't know how I managed to sort of to do that. But I had a quite really a successful career. I did many plays at the Glasgow Cits and the Royal Court. I was Glasgow Citizens Theatre. I was there with you must know who Mark Rylance is.
Of course.
Yes. I was at the Glasgow Cits with Mark Rylance, Rupert Everett, Andy Wilde, Robbie Coltrane, and we were all there as young actors.
Do you go back to theater still, or it hasn't been a while since you've done a play?
It's been a while. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Do you ever think of it? Or?
Oh, I flirt with it all the time. Yeah. I get very misty-eyed and sort of romantic about it. Yeah. I will. Yeah.
Would you advise young actors to do work in theater before they do film, or as a training for film? Or
I would advise it, but it's very, very hard. It's very hard now. When I directed in '97, and I was looking at the CV of young actors that were coming in, and they were all doing sort of episodic television, and hardly any of them were doing theatre. And it's funding, and it's government funded, and it's hard. A lot of theatres are closing down. They're finding it very hard to keep going. And also, I think Broadway, there's been a big sort of seismic shift here too, with the kinds of things that they're doing. But I would advise it if you can do it. It's a great discipline.
Before Sid and Nancy, actually, I can remember back when I was living in Chicago, seeing you in Mike Leigh's film Meantime, which really impressed me so much. It was just extraordinary as this skinhead in that film. And could you talk a little bit about working in that film and working with Mike Leigh?
Well, Mike Leigh he's carved out a very a very unique way of working. I mean, he's the only person that he is the only person that works like that. It is 6 months rehearsal. He knows when you meet, he sort of has a theme, and he knows where the movie will be set. But there's no story, there are no characters. And then you, through a series of improvisations, you first of all work on your own character before you meet other people. And indeed, there are other characters. There were actors in that film that I didn't meet through the entire 6 months of working, because my character wouldn't know them. And so that we never sort of interacted. It's an extraordinary way of working. It used to be devised and directed by Mike Leigh. When I worked with him, it was devised and directed, which I think is probably a better description of it. He's since taken the title of writer, written and directed. And there is some truth in that. But if you take a movie like Naked, I mean, David Thewlis wrote that role. But it is an extraordinary way of working.
From that, you moved on, of course, to the two roles that really established you for all of us, the role of Sid Vicious and then of Joe Orton. What's it like, I mean, first of all, going into films where you're recreating historical characters, actual people? What kind of inspiration or limitation is that on you?
Well, I think as an actor, you have a first of all, you have a responsibility to the character. And above and beyond that, if you're playing someone that's lived and they have relatives who are still living. I mean, at the time, Sid's mother was around, and then I followed that with Joe Orton, and his sister and his brother are still living. So you do, I think, have a responsibility to the family members. I mean, you are playing someone's brother, someone's son, and they are. It's a blessing and a curse, because there is invariably a lot of source material that you can draw on, and with Sid, there's a lot of footage that one can watch. But you are confined somewhat. With a fictional role, you can really sort of let your imagination fly in a different way.
What are the first things that you as an actor work on? A couple of years ago, we had the French actor Vincent Landon here, and when I asked him that question, he said, I've got to know how he walks. I've got to figure out how he walks. Once I get that, then the rest follows through.
It's the sound for me, I think, the way a character sounds. I mean, there is no set method. I don't have a particular way of. Sometimes I will use music. Sometimes I will use photographs, pictures, paintings. Mostly music for inspiration.
When you say music, what do you mean by playing music as you're reading it, or just?
Well, I think that to me, acting is not intellectual. It's a sensation. It's a feeling, and that's what music gives you. That music is it's like pornography. It's immediate, and it works in a different. It just works on a whole different frequency. And I find that it's for me, it's a great way of working, and it's very inspirational. I can create an ambience or a mood that music changes the molecules in the air. There's no. I think it's a supreme art form, and so I tend to work with music, and I want to know how the character sounds. That's sort of that's kind of really where I start. I was looking for a voice for Smiley, And I was lucky enough. Obviously, I had access to John le Carré, and then when I met him, it all worked for me, and I sort of stole it, really. I stole John's voice, and you start off really with an impersonation, for me anyway, and then the more I work on it, the further you get away from that, and you own it. It becomes its own thing. But so with Smiley, it was the physicality I think I got from the book. It's like the Le Carré cookbook. The recipe, the ingredients, it's all there, and if you follow it carefully, you'll cook a good Smiley. So a lot of the way he moves and a lot of physicality came from the book, and vocally, it was John. I met Thomas Harris for 5 minutes, and I got the voice for Hannibal from Mason Verger, and I met him, and he started spoke to me, and I went, oh, that's there it is. It's and you find it. You find things. You can sometimes find them when you're not looking for it, and it's a sort of and it can be an accident.
What about something like, say, the voice of Jackie in A State of Grace, for example? I mean, it's just so spot on in terms of getting a very particular New York accent. Did you work with anyone on that, or how did that come about?
I can't remember if I did now. Did I work with? I worked with Tim Monach. Do you know Tim Monach? Anyone here? Great voice guy. Well, the musicality, the origins, I think, of an accent are still are in. If you take Italian New York, for instance, I think you can still hear the Italian, the original language, in the cadence, the rhythms. There's a musicality to it. So, for instance, you got a classic modular line. Hey, forget about it. It will go. Always the inflection is like it's going down. What's the matter with you? And Irish, to me, has the green and the rolling hills. It has still has the lilt and the musicality of the original language, of the original accent. So the Irish New York, it goes up. So it all goes up at the end. So it's like, forget about it. The other one goes, forget about it. So it's one up, it's one down. And that's how and I went to a lot. In those days, I used to drink. So there was, is that vodka? And I went to a lot of bars. It was a great excuse to, great research. I don't remember a great deal of it. But, so it's fun. It's how you find something, I think, is. I'll give you an example. Can I?
Please.
There was a play that Pravda, which was a play by David Hare, and it was on. It must have been 20 years ago, and it starred Tony Hopkins. And it was so extraordinary that it was a dazzling piece of acting. And you knew when you were watching it that you were in the presence, in the company of one of the greatest performances of the 20th century. You knew that it would hang in the Hall of Fame, with the great Olivier Othello and Gielgud and Richardson and Michael Redgrave and all those great performances I never saw, but we read about. It was an extraordinary piece of acting, and he had a physicality that he had in the play. I'll show you. He sort of was rooted to the spot, and he sort of lean into people. And he had this wonderful sort of way of moving, but without actually lifting his feet from the floor. and he played this sort of corporate kind of. He was like a sort of Murdoch character, sort of takeover guy coming in and buying up Fleet Street. And I was just. I loved the way that he moved, and I got to work with him later. And I asked him, and I said, "That physicality that you have, where did that sort of come from?" And he said that he was on stage at a technical rehearsal at the Olivier Theatre. It was like the 11th hour. They were teching the play, and he was lost and couldn't find the character. And he was standing on the stage, and they were adjusting a light or whatever. There was a pause in the run through, and they were fiddling with some technical thing. And David Hare asked him a question, and it was at the back of the theatre, and Tony couldn't hear him. And so Tony went like this. He said, "What was that?" And he went, "That feels good." And that's how we got the whole sort of physicality of the character at the very, very... I mean, now you have to have the intuition to recognize it when it happens, when the sort of, what I call the cloak of inspiration falls. And that, recognizing it is what makes Tony such a great actor, and that's why he's as good as he is. But it's amazing how things come like that when you're not, he was puzzling through it, and it just fell from the sky. That's it. I love that. That's what's exciting about the job, I think, too.
Once you've been through it all and you've gotten the work, you've gotten the character, I always wonder, and especially someone like you who's played such an extraordinary variety of characters. I mean, after it all, after Sid Vicious and Joe Orton and so many others, do you have to sort of like the characters? I mean, you mentioned before it's not an intellectual thing, but is there a moment where you defend them or you understand them?
Yes, I think you've got to understand the circumstances that they're in. You can't patronize a character. Yeah, you can't bring your. I think it's hard to bring your sort of your baggage to it. You know, I had to like Jackie Flannery to really, I think, to play him. I just don't think you'll be successful with it if you're butting up against it. If you've got problems with it, then don't play the role. You know, I think you have to find something redeeming and something likable in the character, and make them. They're complex, but you make them human. And I think if you find that, then the audience will. I mean, I draw the line on certain things. I was asked to play Manson, Charles Manson, and I wouldn't. It's too much. There's too much karma around that. You know, out of respect for the sister that's still living in Polanski, I just don't think you would want to really go there. But you play a villain. You've got to find a bad guy. You've got to find something that's likable. I mean, it's what. Look at The Sopranos. Why do we all keep watching and we root for Tony Soprano? He's a bastard.
Well, what happens when you go off and you're now playing Dracula, for example? First of all, tell me something about the makeup. Just watching the film again to prepare for tonight, I was just astounded at what you had on in order to do that role.
Yeah, it was all. It's all changed now because it's all. And you had these sclero lenses that were glass. Now they're soft lenses, and it was rubber. It was foam. And it's silicone now, and CG. A lot of rubber, a lot of costume, extraordinary experience. I mean, you 4 weeks rehearsal up in Napa on what we called Camp Coppola, and he cooked a lot of dinners, and we drank a lot of his wine, and we read the book out loud, which was that's tough. That's a tough read out loud. And we impro'd and rehearsed, but there were 2 units running next to one another. There was the main unit, and then there was the second unit, which his son was directing, Roman. And so it meant that really I never had a rest. I never had a day off. It was 6 months shoot, and I mean I worked 150 hours in the old man makeup alone. That's a lot of glue on your face. But you surrender to it. You have to find you have to find a sort of peace with it. You know what you're getting into if you're doing something like that. If you're playing Hannibal or you're doing Dracula, you've got to go with the flow. You know, you can't let it get to you. But there's a place that you just have to sort of find in yourself.
Working with directors like, well, you've worked with Coppola, Oliver Stone, Christopher Nolan, so many strong directors. What is it that you look for in a director? What do you want a director to give you or to do?
Leave you alone. Yeah, the good ones do. Yeah, I mean they nudge you. But I think good directing is knowing when not to say something. When you can see something going, you can see something cooking, and you let it, and you kind of let it happen. But they all work. They all work in a different. They all have their own way of working. You've got someone. You've got someone like Peter Medak, who I did a movie with him called Romeo's Bleeding, and he's he talks. He's like this, darling. Gary, I love your face. And then you go from that to, Tony Scott, who's, when he gets one that he likes, it's like, bingo! First one, print! And it's, this kind of carrot, So you've got they all got the thing. Oliver's a bully. Talented bully. And then Thomas, who did the Tinker Tailor, I mean, you're looking at 2 takes. He didn't really like doing more than you'd get a third take if you're lucky. But it was a big film, and it was an indie. We had to really motor through it. But Thomas, when he likes a take, he does this thing. And after take 2, I would hear that, and I'd go, oh, fuck, we're moving on. And I'd go, one more. I've come all this way. But they're, and Chris is very quiet. Chris Nolan is very, it's amazing. You meet Chris on day 10, and he's standing there looking fresh-faced, and he's got his cup of tea, and then you come back 180 days later or whatever it is, and he still looks just like he did when you met him on day 10. It's amazing kind of stamina that he has. Very sure, very fast, and very quiet, And he'll give you a great note. He'll come up to you and he'll give you a note, and he'll just say, that was good. He says, that was good. Let's do another take. There's a little bit more at stake. Well, it's Batman, isn't it? Just quite. Like, you mean like Gotham, Chris? The world.
Do you like rehearsing when you're doing films? Do you like line read-throughs or actual run-throughs?
I love rehearsing. You don't get to rehearse. That's the They don't.
None of the directors we just spoke about.
No, they
rehearse?
don't really budget. It's not. I don't even know if it's so much to do with the director. It's the studio. People don't really budget for it. Well, people who don't do it, who are not practitioners, don't get they don't get it. So they go, well, you need you don't need rehearsal. These are seasoned pros. They come in, they know what they're doing. I love, but I do like to rehearse. I mean, when I directed, I had 4 weeks rehearsal with the actors on location, with all the props, all the furniture. Yeah, actors get used to a sort of a geography of things. So you know that the glass is there. This is the chair. The relationship with you. And then when they get to a set, the chair is slightly higher. It's at a different angle. This is lower, higher. The cup is further away. And it can. You get used to doing something, and then when you get to the set, it all changes, and it can throw actors, and they go, I don't know, it felt better. I liked it when my arms were up here. Now the chair's too low. I mean, those are the So I was very. I wanted to make my actors feel as comfortable as they possibly could, and just get used to the environment. But I would love rehearsal. You just never get it.
After directing your own film, was there anything from that experience that you brought with you as an actor again in other people's films?
Hard to say. I was always aware of how hard the job is. It's a great job, but it's always be on time. I was always aware that you're racing against the clock. You're always racing against the clock, and the least you can do, I think, is know the lines and turn up on time. I would say that to any young actors that I work with, I would never be presumptuous enough to say you should do this, you should do that, but I would say to them, do your work, do your homework, come prepared, and if you can't be on time, be early. And I tell my kids that, that's vital. But I just had an instinct for it. I always knew that, I think. So I was a good boy. I was a good actor. I was always.
Are you planning to direct again?
I'm hoping to direct in 2013. Yeah, I've got something sort of cooking.
Percolating.
Yeah.
You also entered, a few years ago, into 2 of the major movie franchises, Batman and Harry Potter. Can you talk a little bit about those experiences, and especially your creation of the role in Harry Potter of Sirius Black?
Well, I mean, really, with Harry, with the Potter series, I wish I'd known then what I know now. Really, I mean, as each book came out, you learn more and more about the character, and I think it may have influenced me. If I had known where it was going, and who this guy was, I think I may have played it differently. It's kind of interesting.
Did you talk with J.K. Rowling about the part?
You never see her.
Really?
No. No, she stays away.
How about the imagination of just the role itself? Was it something, when you read it, did you imagine what you would look like, or how did that look come about?
That really came about through Alfonso Cuarón, and it's a very designed piece, as you can imagine, and they had a very clear idea of what they wanted Sirius Black to look like. And of course, when you meet me, I break from jail and I'm in those rags, and I mean, it's funny working on Tinker Tailor. I mean, it's really 6 degrees of Harry Potter, because most of us have worked on those. I think Colin Firth and Mark Strong are the only 2 living English actors who had never been in a Harry Potter movie. Yeah. My friend Kieran Hines, wonderful Irish actor, he just slipped in. He he got into the last one as Dumbledore's brother. We've all of us have been in them. It was going back each time. The crew, the makeup people were there really for the 10, 12 years that it took to make, and it was like sort of reuniting with one's with one's family when you went back. It was a fantastic experience, and my first one is, which I not just because I'm in it, I think Alfonso Cuarón's one is the best.
Me too. I also agree.
The Prisoner of Azkaban he's an artist. There are those people that make movies, and there's those people that make films. There's filmmakers and movie makers, and they're very different animals. And I think that Tomás is another one. You just know when you're working with an artist, and there was something about Alfonso and the whole atmosphere of that Prisoner of Azkaban. So I feel very lucky that that was my first one, and it was with him. And Batman, I mean, what can one say? It's I just recently have you seen the trailer for the? It looks really good, doesn't it? I haven't seen the movie, but you just Nolan's so clever. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to it. I get to see it. It's all a very secretive thing. And the initial reading of the script, it's all under lock and key. There's no ending to it. Some of the actors only get pages. It's all kept very sort of... And I understand the paranoia with people's spoilers and scripts getting out, but I will get to see it put together soon, like a member of the audience. I get to just see it, the whole thing for the first time. They're always very exciting, the screenings of the Batman.
Will there be another one, you think?
No, this is it.
Ah.
Yeah, this is it for Chris Nolan. This is it for
this run of Batman.
Yeah, and I was standing on the set here in New York. This is the new Gotham now. He shot Chicago out. He got tired of it, and we were standing on a rooftop over here, and I said, "Wow, this is it. This is the end." And he said, "Yep. This is it." He said, "Because unless you want to whore your ass out for a load of money for Batman 4, whoever's gonna do that." And they retired. They gave me a shadow box as a gift, and it was my badge, glasses, and underneath they'd got a mustache from one of the stunt guys, the stunt doubles, and they even retired the mustache too. So they gave me this thing. It was very funny, very touching. But I think that's us done.
Can you talk a little bit about The Contender? I mean, that's a film I think you also produced as well as acted in, and film perhaps you feel a little more personal about because of that.
Yeah, it's just not. I thought at the time it was just it was an adult script, and it dealt with something that sort of a subject that fascinated me. We were as a company looking for something that was intelligent, well written, and a role for a woman, and we sort of found the Contender, and we, like you do, we nursemaided it, and found the funding for it, and then and DreamWorks then Spielberg saw it, and then and they just said they picked up the negative, and it got a decent shout, I think. Yeah, but it's one of those that one is very proud of it.
And were there problems at the end? I've heard there was some question about the final cut.
Oh no, that's all
old history.
Well, yeah, and it all got sort of, it all got, it's one of those things where I think I complained about a cut or something or other, and I said to, I think it's Walter Parks, I think was one of the Spielberg team, and I think, and I said, there's a better cut of this movie, and I was talking about a 2.5 minute version. It's 2.5 minutes longer, and it was just a tweak that I felt was, we'd had like 18 screenings of this thing before DreamWorks came along, and then that sort of got out there in some weird way that I was complaining about the cut and that I wanted a longer cut with more of me in it, and that's how those stories they gather, It's certainly, especially in this day and age with the internet, it's just a highway, isn't it, to there, and then it's
Once it's out there.
it's out there. I remember saying, I was at Comic-Con and they said, when is the next Batman movie? When are you doing the next Batman movie? And I sort of flippantly just said, I don't know, I think it's at the end of the year. And there was a rumor that it might be. It went around the world, and I got very scolded by the studio, because it is their prerogative to say when they're not going to release a movie. And I just innocently said, I don't know, I think it's at the end of the year. And it went around the world, and I got into terrible trouble over it. So so it's like those things, you'll say something and it becomes this big story.
To ask you about Tinker Tailor now. There was, of course, a famous miniseries done with a great performance by Alec Guinness. I'm wondering, you coming in as an actor, playing the same role, in what way did you look at it? Was there anything you took from it? Was there anything you said, I don't want to go that way? Or how did Guinness's performance, if at all, affect you?
Well, I didn't rewatch it. I remember watching it when it first came out in '79, and it was the time when there were no VCRs and there was no TiVo and all of that. So you would arrange your social calendar around that 1 hour a week to watch this incredible show, and it was experimental, long form TV, which now we're so used to. It's commonplace now, but it was a very brave thing of the BBC to do at that time. It was the entire book, line for line, word for word. And it was a phenomenal success. Guinness was a much beloved actor, a knight of the realm. He had already done his Obi-Wan Kenobi and was nearing retirement. I think he was nearly 70 when he played Smiley. And he is a giant of the theatre and the movies. That paralyzed me with fear, because you're stepping into such big shoes, and the dragon, in my head, I had to slay I was very fearful that comparisons would be made, because you can't tamper with the formula just for the sake of doing it and being different. You can't mess with the molecules. There is a DNA there, and we are going to arrive at some of the same things, because we're playing the same role, and it doesn't have the license that Hamlet has. You can be 19 and play Hamlet. You could be 35 and play Hamlet. You can be insane. You can be sane. You can be angry. You can be youthful. You could be tall, short. It's all of these things. It's a much broader canvas to interpret. There are rules. There are it's in the piece. And that was a little scary for me, because it's so Smiley is so particular. So it filled me with great fear, because you could really take a fall. And you know, who the hell does he think he is? It's that thing of Sir Alec Guinness, you know. You think you're, you know, it's all of that stuff. All in your head. So I sat with it for a month and eventually said yes. But I would tell my manager, I would say to him, tell them, he would call me and say, then they need an answer. They need an answer. Are we doing Tinker Tailor? And I would say yes. Tell them yes. And then about 3 hours would go by, and I'd call him back, and I'd say, you haven't spoken to Working Title yet, have you? And he would say, no, I haven't called them yet. And I'd say, let me think about it. I'm not sure. And then the next morning I would call and say, yes, I'm definitely in. And then the afternoon I would call and say, I'm out. And it was that fear. It was that sort of anxiety. And in the end I said yes and walked through the fire. And then a week before we started shooting, I called the director and said, maybe I'm not your man. It never actually happened to, I don't know why. Maybe it's something to do with the part, or whether it was because Guinness had such a huge success with it that you were, I mean, you're going to be measured. If you do King Lear or Hamlet or Willy Loman, you are going to be measured against all the great Hamlets and Willy Lomans that came before you, but they live in the memory of the people that were there. What is it? You know, a couple of thousand people. Well, I hope more. You know, ticket sales are good, but with something like Tinker Tailor, it's a holy cow. It just is. And so I think we were all a little nervous. I think Thomas was nervous to take it on. I think Peter Strawn and Bridget O'Connor, the writers, were a little scared to take it on. But it's good. That's good. It keeps you a bit of fear, keeps you on your toes.
I think we're all very glad that you took it on.
I'm very happy. I did. Yeah.
One last one for me. You talked before about meeting Jean Le Carré and talking with him. Did you talk to people who are from that world? I mean, again, sort of more kudos perhaps to Thomas, but the atmosphere is so extraordinary in the film. The thickness of those buildings, the air that people breathe, it's really remarkable. And I'm wondering how all of you work to create that.
Well, you won't meet another director who talks, when he talks colour, and the colour palette, he talks in terms of smells. So he Hoyte van Hoytema, the DP, he would say that he wanted to capture this. Thomas said, "I want to capture the smell of damp tweed." He's a unique man, Thomas Alfredson. I mean, a lot of the atmosphere is obviously down to him and Hoyte. I didn't work outside of the book and the screenplay, and I also met John Le Carré, who was a spy and lived in that world, and so it was sort of one-stop shopping. It was sort of all there for me, and I took a few, as I say, I took a few mannerisms and things from John, but the key to playing Smiley is in the pages of that book. It's sort of all there for you.
Let's get some questions from everyone here. Yes.
Hey. Yes.
Let me just repeat the question. The question is, what attracted Gary Oldman to play either Rosencrantz or Guildenstern in the film of that name?
I think I was Rosencrantz.
Yes.
I think I was. Yes, but they get confused in the play all the time, don't they? They never really know who we are. Yeah. It was. I'd always loved it. I'd seen the play. I'd never been in the play, but I'd seen the play. I loved Tom Stoppard's work. And it found me. they called, and I met Stoppard, and he was he teamed me up with Tim, and we did a little bit of rehearsal for him. And now that is a film that we did have rehearsal on. You got to know that. You've got to know it. You can't just sort of. It's not one of those things you can come in on the day and have the piece of paper under the chair and say, hang on a minute, you know. It's, yeah, we had to, we rehearsed that and knew that, and knew it like you would a play. I don't seek out roles. My career has been totally, I've been invited in a way to play things. People call. And they, you know, I mean, you don't get offered every script. And for a while there, I was typecast. I did those 2 roles for Luc Besson, those sort of rather comic caricatures, really, of Leon, the professional, and the Fifth Element, and then everything that came in was a villain, and you know, you got to work. And but Tom just called and found us. It was an absolute joy, and it's great working with the writer, as someone as you know, as prolific as Stoppard, because he would go away to his little room. And he would say, you know, this needs something. Let me go away, and he would come back 5 minutes later, and he would give us something on a piece of paper, and he would say, just try that. But I did a lot of slapstick comedy. I did a lot of sort of pratfalls and slapstick and physical stuff like that. And one day Stoppard said to me, you know, he said, Gary, I love all the physical stuff you're doing. He said, but the play is quite funny. The words are quite. The words are good too, you know.
Maybe that was the mime training.
The mime. Yes.
Training, that was it. Was there any role that got away, a role that you really wanted and just didn't come your way finally?
Yeah. There's a few I turned down as well. That I mean, you turn down roles for reasons that you know they're valuable reasons at the time, and it's life circumstances, how long you're going to be away, where you're going to be away, what the kids are up to, is it going to interrupt the school year, is it going to, you know, there's all these sort of variables that you kind of have to deal with when, you know, or you're not available, you're working on something else. But there's a few I've turned down that have been very, very successful and have been, you know, won an Oscar for one actor. But we've all got those skeletons, you know, in our closet, you know. But yeah, the couple of them have. Yeah.
Yes, over here.
I was wondering if, when you do a very emotional character in a movie, do you try to stay in that place all day on set, or is it something that you could just do, you know, on the spot?
No, you know, you're when you have a day that is an emotional day in a movie, or it could be a violent scene, or you there's a sort of headspace that you have to you know it's coming. It's sort of like a cloud over you. I would. It's a bit like standing at the foot of a mountain. You come in that morning and you know what is required of you, and you're like looking at the peak and you think, oh, I've got to get there. I've got to get there today. And it would some days it would, you know, it's you've got to be on. It's an unusual job in that sense. You can't really afford to have a day off. I mean, like just a day off of your game. So that when you're asked to come in and perform a scene that is emotional, I always I get irritable. I'm I do. I've found now that that's quite a pattern with me, that I'm a little short-tempered, or I'm a little more irritable, you know, and I know that that's me working. You know, it's a weird thing, because you know, if you see Dracula crying, for instance, in a scene about, you know, when he's tearing down the walls of Mina, and all, it's Gary crying, really. I mean, I'm an actor, and there's a facility that you're using, and you're using a physicality, you're using a technique. There's a wig, there's makeup, there's clothes, there's an accent. But the tears are mine. They're not Dracula's. And you have to go to a place, you know, and you are then, I think, contaminated for a while. It's not method. I don't think it's not like people can't talk to me and not look me in the eye and all that crap, you know. But you are in a headspace when you do sort of emotional scenes. The great thing I found, one of the freedoms and the great really for playing Smiley, was that because all of that emotion that he feels, obviously he knows it's Hayden before he lets the audience know it's Hayden. All that sort of betrayal and the very complex, inappropriate sort of relationship, very dysfunctional relationship that he has with his wife, all that melancholy and that sadness and emotion that he's carrying around is always sort of there, bubbling underneath as a sort of subtext. But I got to do it in my bedroom, in my kitchen, and then I would just sort of bring it in, and it would sit there. I was not asked to physicalize it, express it physically, like I've had to do in the past, where you're just where you come in and you have to kind of like bounce off the walls. So I found it very liberating and very freeing that I could hold on to it, but I could do it all. I could do it all from a chair, you know. But I think once you've done the work, then you can come in and out of a character, and you can joke between takes, and you know, but you've got to have done the work. I think the homework. There has to be a ground zero, a base to it. But you can imagine that all of us chaps in that room you know, I mean, you're standing there on Harry Potter, and Maggie Smith says to you, "What face are you pulling, darling?" She said, "Because I've run out." Well, after 6 films, I mean, you would run out, wouldn't you? Of what, you know? There was one day when she was just moving around in the background in that black cloak with that sort of witch's hat. You know, she was just moving around. Really, that day, she was just the great Dame Maggie Smith was really just a glorified sort of extra at the back of the set. And she turned to me and she said, "You know, next time I'm just going to send the fucking hat." And then they go, "Okay, pull it together, action," you know, and then she's into it.
See in the back there, we got some questions. Yes, ma'am, right here. If you're right.
Thank you. Yeah. No, the character's stuck with you. Yeah, because I'm playing it, or whoever's, you know, it's the character's stuck with. The character is stuck with George Clooney, Matt Damon, you know, Brad Pitt, Dan Day-Lewis, you know, That's you learn that though. You get it's not something it's not something you know instantly when you first start out, and you have to I don't know. There's what was it? Your friend said he's got to find the walk.
Right.
Yeah,
How the character walks.
yeah. It's funny how things. I was doing a movie, Romeo's Bleeding, and we shot the very ending of the film. In fact, was the actual ending of the shoot, which is very rare because you shoot the end in the middle and the middle in the beginning. But we were shooting out in the desert, and the next morning I was going straight to the set of True Romance. So I wrapped in the desert in the Sunday night, drove to LA, and then the Monday morning I went to play Drexel. With my wig and my eye and my teeth and all of this, which Tony Scott had not seen. So I just sort of turned up on the set, in my play clothes and said, "Is it okay?" And he liked it. So it was, but at the end of Romeo's Bleeding, I step out of a diner, and the very last shot is me walking from the diner to a gas pump. And if you look closely, I've already got the swagger of Drexel. I'm already sort of morphing, doing the other, doing the other guy, and I didn't even notice it myself until my girlfriend at the time was in the movie, and she said, "You got to be, I would do another take if I were you." She said, "You're walking like a Drexel."
Let's see. Yes, right there, sir. Yes, you, right.
Yeah, just the
Yes.
one. It was called Nil by Mouth. Yeah. Why didn't I follow it with something else? Well, I tried to. Funny enough, I tried to follow it with. I wrote a film about a sort of a guy in a sex addict, and it was he was married and had a mistress and all the machinations of that, it was very, very, very difficult. It was very difficult to finance. I couldn't get the money, or at least I couldn't get the money to do it the way I wanted to do it. He's a 50-year-old Italian, a New Yorker, and they said, "We'll give you the money if you put Russell Crowe in it." And I said, but it's an Italian, I need, he's terrific, but not for me in this role. I don't see him somehow in that part. And it went around, it bounced around to a few people, and it's just sat there on the shelf. But I recently, a year ago, took it out and relooked at it, and would you believe, updated it, because my character's got a pager. And then you've got also now with the internet, and you've got the iPhone. You've got free pornography is free now. You have all that chat rooms and all that. What was that? Viagra. And you have Viagra. And so I'm kind of, let's say, no pun intended, I've done a polish on it. But that won't be 2013. But it's still a very, very touchy subject. I ran into Steve McQueen of shame fame. And I said to him after the wonderful thing he did about the Bobby Sands, the hunger. I said, terrific. And I said, why did you set the movie in America? Why did you set it in New York? And he said, because I couldn't get any money to do it in England. No one wanted to shoot it. No one wanted to do it in London, set it in London. So he transposed it and set it in America. So it's still I think it's still a very, very, it's a very touchy subject for people. But actually, I'm rambling. To answer your question, also I had 2 boys, and I became a single dad, and that was a sort of priority of mine. So I thought, well, I can either be a dad who's sort of working away a lot, or be a dad at home. So I chose to sort of put the career a little bit on the back burner. There's a commitment to directing a film. There's a real commitment to it that it demands a great deal of you. I mean, Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy's 10 weeks from me. I mean, there's obviously prep work that one does, but the shoot was 10 weeks. It's 2.5 years for Thomas Alfredson. It's a big commitment. But they're getting older now. They can
fend for themselves.
Well, I mean, now they're chatting to their friends on their phone. Oh yeah, see you later, Dad. Yeah.
Time for a couple more. Yes, ma'am, right here. Yes, you're right. Yeah, you right.
Dracula, if I could ask you a quick question.
Yeah.
First off, I just, for me, your physical and emotional life in Dracula was beautifully, just so deep and so full of fire. And so I've seen a million Draculas, and that one has always been one of my favorites, mainly because of the humanness and the fire that you gave him, and all the romance was really
Yeah.
Dracula was such a romantic thing. Do you remember the music that you listened to prepare, if you used music or sound at all for Dracula?
Questions about the music that Gary Oldman used to prepare for his role in Dracula.
I think I listen to a lot of Beethoven, oddly. Yeah, because it's got such. It's yeah. I wanted to play. I auditioned for the role. Went up to Napa, met Francis, did a screen test. But when I read the script, I loved the line. I wanted to do the film because I thought the line of "I've crossed oceans of time to find you." That's what made me want to do the movie. I read that line. I thought, I've got to say that to someone. What a great line this is. Yeah. So that's and that's why I wanted to. That's really why I wanted to do them. I mean, I had no desire above that to, I'd never kind of thought, well, I hope I get to play Dracula one day. I mean, it wasn't an ambition of mine. You know what I mean? And my life, I could have, it would have been fine without him. But that line was, I just thought was so. Just God, we want to say something like that to someone. You know what I mean? We love someone to love someone that much to be able to say a line like that. And then the voice. He was saying, I heard the voice for Dracula, but couldn't physically do it. So I worked with an opera singer, and I worked for 2.5, 3 months to lower my voice on that one, because funny, you hear, but you sometimes you hear something and you can't. I mean, you hear it, but you can't do it. You can't achieve it. But I remember reading the script and thinking, and I heard that sound, that it's all that sort of Mr. Harker. That. You all right?
Yeah, you're right. Gary, we'd keep you here all night, but we know you have to go. Thank you so much for coming. Congratulations on everything. Thank you very much.